All right, we're live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to start today's Superintendent's Webcast and talk about the CARES Act primarily. We will be joined by Commissioner Brown, and we'll have a moderator that will help us with today. If we can remind you to make sure that you've muted your phones and online to make sure that we don't get that feedback. And also, if you're not participating, also make sure that your video is turned off. So we're going to go ahead. I'll see if Commissioner Brown, I'll pause here for just a minute to see if he is on the line to kick us off. If not, we'll jump right into the CARES Act and do that piece first. Commissioner Brown, are you on the line?
I am. I apologize. I'm a little late to the party. I was on another call, which is our new normal now, of course, jumping from call or Microsoft team meeting to team meeting. So I'm here now. Superintendents want to thank you again, and also other members of the co-ops who are with us, as well as the K groups associated with superintendents and local boards. We want to thank you all for being on the call again. And Robin, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, there was a conflict today with a call from the U.S. Department of Ed, and that was sent out, I think, from Senator McConnell's office and others, but we were on what is was an earlier call that I think is going to be the exact same content as what the call is going on right now with U.S. Department of Ed, and Robin will brief you on later on in her presentation about what was said on that call. So I don't think you're going to miss anything by being on the superintendent webcast instead of being on the federal call. We were not aware of that conflict. And we knew that we were having an earlier call for information, and we'll share that with you later. So I just wanted to clarify that. Again, I won't repeat. You all know the decision, and we were on the call with the governor earlier in the week. I want to thank you all for your questions and for your cooperation and all of that. I know it is a trying time, and everyone working very hard, but we're hitting some exhaustion levels and fatigue, and I understand that. I saw a little bit of that in action through the principal advisory committee meeting yesterday, and then the day before that, the teachers advisory, because it was fairly quiet. And I think those two groups, as you all know, from when you have your similar advisories, that those aren't always quiet, and we don't want them to be quiet, but I think folks are just tired. I understand that, and but also I think it's so important that we have a base level of instruction that we're having for our students across Kentucky, which was what we're doing, and you all are doing that every day. And some of you that are going on into the remainder of May, I know that's going to be a heavy lift for you, but just know that it's appreciated, and I know that students are going to benefit because of it. So I'll defer our questions that you may have just in general about that, because they may be covered by Robin, and I know everybody, time is precious. So Robin, I'll just go ahead and turn it back over to you for the presentation on CARES Act.
Hey, Kevin and Robin, before you start, I just wanted to address the email on the senior pictures, if you don't mind, before we get started on this.
Okay.
Is that fine?
Sure.
So I know the superintendents, you all just, hold on, let me turn my video on so you know. I just sent you all a email to all the superintendents, and it's entitled Class of 2020 Group Photo Submission. If you can go ahead and get that out to all of your principals. We are working on a special project to honor our seniors, and we need your help and the help of our principals to get this project completed. And we do have a quick turnaround on this. I need to have up to 10 photos submitted by May 1st. So if you can check your email from me, Tony Kronz-Tatman, and if you have any questions, feel free to send those my way, and we will be back in touch with you. Thank you.
And I would just add to that, the Lieutenant Governor really wanted to make sure that we were doing something at the state level to honor the class of 2020, because we know that they are making tremendous sacrifices. We also want to just celebrate their future and make sure we send the message to them that they have bright futures ahead. And so that's we've been having conversation with the Lieutenant Governor's office about maybe something special we could do. It's still in the planning stages, and there may be some logistical issues as to whether we can bring it fully to come to fruition or not, but we hope so. And so that's why we were requesting these photos to help populate that that presentation. So Robin?
Okay, we'll jump into today's presentation. If I can start by saying, I think our presentation will quickly lead you to understand that we are continuing kind of our three-prong approach, which is educate, feed, and support. And so you'll see elements of each of those in our presentation today. Our presentation is going to be on the CARES Act. So Tony, if I could ask you to go to the first slide and with our agenda so that we can start walking through the PowerPoint together.
Okay. All right. Let me know when you see it.
I do see it. If you can
get a full, is it full size?
It is. Thank you. So if you can go to the first. Okay, today's agenda is going to focus on the CARES Act. And I will share with you that we know that we have lots of questions swirling around lots of areas of operations. The logistics of either closing down your school this year or working on the startup of next year. Let me just preview this presentation to let you know that we will have another superintendent's call on Tuesday, this upcoming Tuesday, to talk about lots of those logistics about attendance, further issues on coding, more of the nuts and bolts that you might have seek for next year, all those types of things. Today's presentation, we're going to try to just update you as much as we can on the information that we have right now about the CARES Act. And we're going to focus primarily on two pots of funds. That is the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund and the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. We're also going to preview for you a program that we see coming down the path, and we really are optimistic that this will come to fruition. It's more of a timing thing of when it will come, but we want to get a little out in front of it to educate you more about it. It's called the Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer Program. So we will have some information in today's presentation on that program as well. Okay, Tony, if we can go to the next slide, please. We are going to try to approach this presentation today with answering your questions about who, what, how, and with a good balance in there of there are still some things that we just don't know. Our goal is to always share information with you that is accurate, and sometimes it's better for us to not share with you things too prematurely, but we are continuing to learn things every day. Tony, I just want to check with you. I do not see the PowerPoint on my screen at this point.
Somebody else started sharing, so hold on.
Thank you.
Request control. I'm not sure what happened. I'm going to stop. Hold on a second. All right, let me try to share this again. Somebody else took control of the. All right, we back up.
Thank you. We are back up. Thank you so much.
Hopefully nobody else will take control.
Okay, so we're going to talk about, let's first talk about the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. That is a fund that we know a little more about. It seems to be progressing a little more quickly. Kentucky's allocation is $43,799,187, and we actually received the notice of that amount, and our application was open for Kentucky and all states on March 14th. We have been working closely with the governor's office and the lieutenant governor, and we are expected, we're moving along very nicely, and we are expected to file with USED by May 1st. I've put that May 1st date in there as kind of an outside date. It is possible that that'll be even filed before then. We do expect that there will be a quick review and approval from USED. We are seeing information that shows that they are anticipating as short as a 3-day turnaround. And so we're very optimistic that this will allow for a quick disbursement, receipt of funds and disbursement to local school districts. Some provisions about this fund is the governor has 1 year from the receipt of the funds to make awards to local school districts and to other recipients of this fund. And as a reminder, I think we shared this in our last call, the governor can award funds to provide really under 3 big headings. Emergency support to local education agencies, those are school districts, that the state education agency deems significantly impacted, most significantly impacted by the coronavirus. There are also funds available for, that could be available for emergency support to institutes of higher education. And then the last bullet that contemplates some of these funds could go to any other institute of higher education, LEA, or education-related entity within the state that the governor deems essential for carrying out educational services. We very much appreciate the outreach from the governor's office, Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman and her staff. KDE staff have already talked with them about guidance and direction that they see for the uses of this funds. And the Education and Workforce Development Cabinet will actually be submitting that application on behalf of all the entities that will receive funds from this pot of money. If we go to the GEER fund uses, and again, our appreciation very much to the governor's office. Out of that approximately $43 million, the governor and lieutenant governor have indicated that $30 million of the GEER funds will be used and allocated to elementary and secondary education. Again, very, very appreciative of the recognition of school districts' need at this point in time. There is a requirement in the bill that talks about determining how most will be significantly impacted. And I want to share that the path that Kentucky is advocating on behalf of all local school districts is that all school districts in Kentucky have been significantly impacted by coronavirus. So instead of us trying to determine through whatever factors, districts that may be more hurt than others, we are advocating for all. Those districts, all districts have been impacted. Districts went to a different model of instruction about the same time. We see lots of things impacting from food service levels. So you're all dealing with similar issues that are impacting your districts just to varying degrees. So we do have the support of the cabinet and the lieutenant governor of this approach. So we will proceeding with our application in that way. With the guidance and direction and discussions with the lieutenant governors and the cabinet, as well as Commissioner Brown and others here at the department, the application portion for local education entities will be to support remote learning and technology and school district food service. So those are kind of the 2 broad areas that the department is preparing the application to make sure that these are 2 areas that we see as identified need, and we'd like to put the $30 million toward these efforts. The U.S. Department of Education has also advocated that states consider remote learning in their efforts for use of the GEER funds. And so this will really allow a second pot of money that will be dispersed to local school districts. We, again, want to make sure that we make this as simple and flexible as possible for our local school districts. So we contemplate that once our application is approved, and we are optimistic that it will be approved, we will require from superintendents an assurance document to be signed, and we will be asking that the board, your local board, is notified of how these funds will be dispersed to you, but we are not going to require local board action in order to receive those funds. But you definitely need to be having conversations with your board about the money coming to you. We have also found out that these funds may be used for eligible expenses occurring either on or after March 13th. So that was the date of the national declaration of the emergency of the corona pandemic. And so we had many questions about possible, how far back could we actually go back and recoup some of our expenses? And so now we have that answered. That is March 13th. The GEER funds will be available for obligation by the receiving entity, which will be local school districts, through September 30th, 2022. I do think it's important to note that GEER funds cannot be used to replace state aid. So that is the SEEK formula. It's not a replacement for that. And we are seeking additional information on this provision just to make sure that we're clear. But again, you can see the language carried below about this is to support, these are emergency grants to kind of shore you up or to support other education-related entities within the state that the governor deems essential for carrying out emergency education services. Very much about shoring you up to get through this very, very difficult time. Next slide, please. So I'm going to stop here for just a second so that if we have any questions, Tony, about just the governor's emergency fund, we'll allow for a couple of questions if we have anything. Okay, well, we'll keep rolling. And
Yeah, let me check on that. I mean, I didn't see any in there, but let me roll up to the top. You just keep going on and I'll look at that for you.
That's fine. Okay, so the other large pot of money coming out of the CARES Act for local school districts is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. And as Commissioner Brown noted at our, we just either had terrible timing or great timing as we ended up with a call from US Ed that was occurring at the same time as our webcast here. But we were fortunate enough to sit in on a call at 12:30 that we got to hear sort of a preview of some of the things that were shared at the 2 o'clock call that is happening right now by US Ed. I guess I also had a heavy sigh of relief because as I listened to the 12:30 call, it didn't really change any of my materials in here. I just have a little bit more to share with you, which is good news. So the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund is Kentucky's grant is about $193 million. In fact, it is $193,186,874. We've already received that as a notice from the U.S. Department of Ed, so we know that is our amount. From that amount, a minimum amount of 90% of that will go to local school districts. It is important that it will go to all school districts as Title I recipients. This is a relief package, not a stimulus package. So it really is to provide relief to local school districts. It will be distributed through the Title I-A formula. So I think at the last superintendent's call, we discussed the ability of your finance officers and superintendents to be able to go out and look at the posting for fiscal year 19 and see what you got in fiscal year 19. And then you could determine that on top of what you receive in your regular Title I allocation, you will receive another allotment of money from this fund at about 83% of what you received in fiscal year 2019. There was a little bit of confusion from our last call, so I want to make sure that I'm clarifying that this is in addition to your Title I-A funds. It is not in lieu of or replacing that. So you'll still get your Title I funds, and then you'll get this on top of it. It's also important to understand that even though that is sort of our distribution method, these funds may be expended much more broadly than just the Title I funds. So they are not constrained by those requirements of Title I. USED has not yet released the application or notice of funds. That is required by April 27th. And I can share with you on our earlier call today, we received notice that the application will be released today. So we are expecting to receive that at any time, and we will start working on that application. Once it is received, and once we complete the application, which we will do very expeditiously, USED must take action on the application within 30 days of receipt under the terms of the CARES Act. But at today's call, we also learned that it is their goal to have a very quick turnaround, very quick to turn around to states and approve applications, which their goal is a 3-day turnaround. They did caution us just a little bit because we have lots of applications being submitted through one system. And so I think they are being cautiously optimistic about the turnaround time. That is truly their goal, but we'll have to see what the system bears as far as everyone kind of hitting the system at the same time. Next slide, please.
Okay, Robin, we did have some GEER questions. Do you want to keep going and then just hit them towards the end, or?
You can do that.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. As I mentioned, the ESSER Fund is really broad on what LEAs may spend their funds on. And it's very much designed to be within the flexibility of the local school district to address your needs. So I don't know that I need to read through each one of these independently, but you can see it's very flexible. Any activities authorized under current federal programs, they have encouraged you to think about preparedness and response efforts, helping your principals and school leaders, addressing those special population groups that might need extra help right now, training and professional development for your staff on sanitation, minimizing the spread of infectious disease, as we know, and we start looking towards coming back to the school building whenever that may occur, really thinking through what it will take to make sure that your building is ready for whatever design that comes in the future, and what it will look like as you continue to provide instructional opportunities for your children. Next slide, please. The next slide, it continues. Again, these are just some things that you could think about using. Purchasing supplies to sanitize and clean, planning and coordinating during long-term closures. That's exactly where we are right now. So anything that you need to do to support provision of meals, technology for online learning, guidance for carrying out your IDEA requirements, purchasing education technology. We saw that as a question that had kind of appeared in our earlier webcast. And so it clearly is funding can be used to purchase education technology, including hardware, software, and connectivity for your students. We have seen a rising need for mental health services and supports. You know, we are operating in a very different environment, and reach out to all students that might need a different manner of interacting as far as their mental health is required. Very, very important during this uncertain time. And looking toward the summer, planning and implementing summer learning and supplemental after-school program. We're in an environment where the school really is going to have a hard time, you're going to need maybe some remediation, intervention efforts that these funds could be used for. Again, keeping it very flexible to what you think you might need in your individual district. And then the last bullet, I'm going to stop for just a minute and spend a little bit of time on, because it's sort of this large catch-all. Other activities necessary to maintain LEA operations and services and employ existing LEA staff. So we've had some questions about whether you can use this fund for salaries. And based upon this language and what we have learned today, we do believe you can do that to help. I think continued caution would be where it says existing LEA staff. We want to make sure that we are not really, we would not encourage you going to employ additional staff for long-term endeavors. There might be some short-term endeavors that you might be able to use it for, but really this is to try to bridge you back to a time when revenues might look more normal. So we've had that questions about salaries, and it does appear that we can use it to pay existing staff salaries. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over now to Charlie Harmon to talk about sort of the process. This is more on the how that funds will be dispersed and what we will need from districts to keep in mind as funds start flowing to them. Charlie?
So continuing with the we're trying to make it as easy as humanly possible theme, we're trying to take existing processes and adapt the requirements to make it as easy on districts and the department to some degree as possible. So first, there are requirements for district assurances. So for the last several years, we've had GMAP in place. So all your superintendents are familiar with that. So we're going to allow an assurance document to be submitted through GMAP. So there will only be 1 or 2 people that have to be involved in that. Not hard signatures, not emails and scanned documents or overnight mail. None of that is a requirement. Just submit the document in GMAP. It will be a 1-pager that says, I agree to follow all the rules around the ESSER funds, as well as Robin mentioned, to notify our board of this agreement, of this assurance. So we had a similar document. It was 1 or 2 pages back in 2009 for ERA, except that was a hard copy process. So we're trying to improve on that and make that a little bit easier. And once again, just like all of our assurances, we will not be able to release any funds to you until we have those assurance documents that have been received in GMAP. So we still think that's literally a 45-minute or 15-minute exercise for school districts. Payments, once again, we've got a federal cash request process in place. We plan to use that. We've set up new funds for each of the pots of money we have. We have a fund set up for CARES Act ESSER funds and a CARES Act Governor's Fund. So those are being input in Munis as we speak. What Robin mentioned, and we have confirmation now, I believe, is that if you bought or had any expenditures back to March 13th, those are considered eligible expenses. So if you want to get your team to start keeping those records and requesting reimbursement for those funds, those will be eligible. And as Robin said, as soon as we have access to the funds, we will quickly turn that around and process that federal cash reimbursement for you. So there should be a very small wait time. And there may be a district or 2 that have some extenuating circumstances that either haven't or can't make their current obligations that they have with things that are eligible for these funds. So there are extenuating circumstances that you could have a payment advance for this. Very limited. And the reason we do that is there's federal law in place about the Cash Management Improvement Act that says you can't have federal money to put in your savings account and draw interest. That's a simple version of a 30-page law, but that's for that intent, and that's a similar process to what we use now with all our federal grants. Reporting, once again, we're trying to make this as simple and easy as possible. From the department's perspective, all we're going to have is our normal routine Munis CDIP reports, quarterly basis, submitted to the department. We don't know of any, but there may be some additional requirements that are that's set forth by U.S. Department of Education, because we really don't have all the details yet. But you know, we're trying to make it as easy as we can there. So if there are no additional requirements from US Ed, you probably won't see any here from the department as well. And that's all I've got, Robin. If we have questions, or go on.
We can go on to the next slide. Tony, do you have any questions that maybe we could take a break here and take a couple?
Yes, we do have several questions. So let me go over to those. Give me a second. We can go back to the first. Let me finish. Let me stop sharing this for a moment. And so we'll go to the top, and they want to know how much they will receive in GEER funds. Is it per student or based on needs?
You know, that's a great question, and we haven't yet determined the methodology for disbursement of the GEER money. We are trying to, again, think of an equitable approach, because we have advocated on behalf of all. So I think we're really trying to make sure that our all really means all before we talking about how we're going to distribute those funds to local districts. But we are trying to just think in advance on equitable models in case we do not have to go to a lesser number of districts that would receive based upon the language of most significantly impacted. So we will have further information on that soon. As soon as we know that our application has been approved, we'll be able to share that.
Okay. Can we use the GEER funds to buy new computers for students?
You can use the GEER funds to buy new computers for students. That is a permissible expense if our application is approved as written, because computers would support our category of using GEER funds for remote learning and technology purchases. So you absolutely can if we get approval of our application.
Okay. Will GEER funds be able to be used for extra cleaning and disinfecting supplies, as well as extra PPE?
So the GEER funds are really designed to be utilized in those two broad areas: remote learning, technology, and I use those as one area, and then continuation of food services. I guess if you think of cleaning the areas to provide your food service, I would say that you could probably do that. Anything that requires cleanliness, hygiene, safety for food service, I think that is a permissible use. But remember, you'll also have that opportunity to use your elementary and secondary fund money for that purpose as well.
Okay. Let's see here. They wanted to know where they can find a copy of the PowerPoint being used. And I can tell you that the most recent PowerPoint was updated, and it was sent out from Interim Commissioner Brown into your email boxes at 12:38 p.m. It is also included in your invitation. It's attached to that in your calendar. And so that is where you can find it. And if you did not get a copy of that, you can email me and I will provide that for you as well. The next question is, since CERS is frozen next year, which we can be thankful for, will it be on a new trajectory, or will we have to have a huge jump in 21-22 to make up for the frozen year?
Charlie, do you know how to respond to that. That's a budget question about what happens in the future. You got your crystal ball out?
I believe the person making the request is exactly right. It was frozen, and we should expect an increase.
Okay. All right, and then there's a couple of questions on the, what we were just talking about on, and it looks like they were, what can ESSER be used for if GEER replaces funds for non-USDA reimbursed food service and computers/internet? What other expenses would ESSER cover?
So there are 2 slides. If you don't have the PowerPoint presentation, those are some of the things that we talked through, but they are very, very broad. So think of ESSER money, anything that you could already expend dollars on in any of those federal programs that are identified, you can spend ESSER money on it. And then also things related to the coronavirus specifically, preparedness, cleaning. It's very, very, very broad. So I would encourage you to take a look at those 2 pages. And then if you have specific concerns, of course, we're always here to answer those questions. Additionally, I'll let you know that we are going to be updating our funding matrix. So it'll help you also to look not only about uses for existing programs that you have, but also we'll include 2 new columns, one for GEERS and one for the elementary and secondary fund, and let you know the permissible purposes. So you'll have it all there in one convenient location. But think of it very, very broadly.
Can ESSER funds be used in non-Title I schools?
Yes, ESSER funds can be used in non-Title I schools because the Title I formula is only how we're going to distribute to the district. So it can be used in non-Title I schools, or you can leave it at the district level. You can take it down to the schools. You can do it. It really is so flexible about how you intend on using it.
Okay. Title I currently does not allow for high school expenditures. Is this true for GEER as well?
Not for GEER. So GEER is not bound by any of the Title I, and really ESSER isn't either. If you'll continue to just keep in mind that Title I is only determining how much money you're receiving from ESSER. That's really all it's doing. And then after that, you look at expending those dollars in many, many different ways. So don't feel constrained by the Title I rules once you receive that funding.
To clarify, can we use ESSER funds to retain current staff for next school year so that we don't have to non-renew them due to budget cuts?
That is a permissible use. However, I would caution, you just need to be thinking across all your available funds and continuing to remember that at some point these funds will go away. So continue to think in that manner. It's really just to help you shore up for the short term. And at some point, these funds will go away.
And I think that will answer the next question, which is please clarify using ESSER funds for existing salaries. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that one.
I will say, and I'm going to invite Matt Ross to jump in for just a second on this question. The Act really discourages and basically says, although we don't have this in written guidance yet from USED, the Act does not encourage or even really want you to go in the direction of paying for administrative salaries. They're really thinking more of teachers and your classified staff, but they really are not looking at the use of this for your administrative salaries. In fact, there's some language in the CARES Act, and it does seem a little inconsistent at times because it encourages districts to continue to pay the salaries and engage your staff, both employees and contractors. It's not that it's a requirement to receive those funds, but it clearly has an aspirational tone in the bill about districts taking care of that. So it is permissible to pay for some of those salaries, but I would really discourage the use of it for administrative salaries.
Did you want Matt is he going to join in, or do you want me to go to the next question?
Matt, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Matt Ross is our policy advisor in the Office of Finance and Operations.
No, I think you said it very well, that the act does discourage, and guidance from USED discourages the use of these funds for administrative level salaries. So.
Okay.
Well, we have a couple more slides that are still related to the CARES Act. Let's get through the rest of those, and then we'll come back to questions.
All right, let me go ahead and share the slide again. Give me a second.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do you see it? And is that the right slide?
Let's see. Now let's go back a couple of slides. I think we should be on maybe slide 10. Go back one more. There we go. Okay, now we're in the right spot. One thing that we have had questions about for both GEER and ESSER is the provision of equitable services for non-public schools. And we want to be, we do want to share with you that equitable services provisions do apply to both GEER and ESSER funds. And we, on the call today with CCSSO and USED, this was a topic that received a lot of questions because there hasn't been, there's been very, very little guidance on it. But we can share with you what we know to date. And the CARES Act does require local school districts to provide equitable services in the same manner as provided under ESSA. It also indicates that control of the CARES Act funds and items purchased with the funds must remain in public control. So they'll stay with the local education agency. And then they do have a definition of a non-public school as being a school that is accredited, licensed, or otherwise operates in accordance with state law. And they must have, that non-public school must have existed before the emergency was declared. So any new non-public school that has been created since the date of the emergency would not be eligible. You had to be in existence before the emergency was declared. The Office of Continuous Improvement and Support here at KDE is the office that typically deals with this issue, and they will be providing additional guidance on the equitable services provision under GEER and ESSER. And we do have people on the phone with us today to answer questions, but I will share with you that there's limited information out there right now. But we are aware that it will be applicable to both GEER and ESSER funds. Next slide, please. I did include one slide in here to talk about chart of accounts. I know we have lots of district finance officers online with us today. And so this is the highest level that we could provide at this point, as we are still learning about nuances and how best to capture both revenues and expenditures. So I have put this slide in to help those finance officers with 2 new project numbers. And I have asked my staff that we are of course doing the superintendent's call on next Tuesday, but we're also going to arrange for a separate call just for finance officers to talk through more all your detailed questions around coding and, you know, which box to put things in and what that will look like. We know you have a lot of questions, and we just thought it would be more productive to have that in a conversation directly with district finance officers instead of working all through all those logistics on a superintendent's call. If finance officers would like to go ahead as part of the soapbox, go ahead and submit your questions. Or if you'd like to submit questions to Steve Lyles in district support services, we'll start collecting those questions so that we can answer many of those on next week's call. or we can answer that at the next web call just for district finance officers. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today, but we will be able to answer those questions a little more thoroughly on a separate call. Next slide, please. I wanted to also just once again, and we had this slide actually in our last presentation. I think the day of our last presentation, we had actually submitted our waiver for additional funding flexibilities, and it has been granted by US Ed already. Again, appreciate the very, very quick turnaround of US Ed and how simple they made our waiver request. It's very, very nice that we could go ahead and get that behind us so that we could advise districts accordingly. But the waiver request, I'll put this in here just as a reminder that even with your existing funds, the CARES Act provided a mechanism for us to request waivers for Title I and extending the period of availability of prior fiscal year funds in certain program areas, and then making some changes to add additional flexibility in Title IV. So all these current programs and the funding that you're going to have going forward, you will have even additional flexibilities for those current dollars and current programs, as far as giving you a little more time to spend and a little bit of waiver of how you operate within Title IV. So as you consider, again, looking at the big picture and trying to look across all your fund sources, you really have to be thoughtful about what you can use your general funds for, what you can use your CARES Act money for, both from elementary and secondary pot, the governor's pot, and then you have these additional flexibilities for funds that you already have. So that was I just put that in as a reminder again that this waiver was granted by USED, and so this is now available to all local school districts. We will also be providing guidance for the waivers, as well as guidance on the elementary and secondary and the governor's emergency pots of money in writing. What we've done is we've created a cross-department agency team, and every office has been working on guidance. Again, what we're trying to do here is get a little in front of USED, so when the funds do come, and if there's any other parameters that we need to consider, we would just be tweaking our guidance that we're already working on rather than starting from scratch. Again, we do that with a recognition that it's important that we get funds to you quickly, and we want to help you to think of things that maybe you haven't thought of completely that might be available for expenditure of funds. So appreciate the efforts across the department of all the offices working on that, and we will provide written guidance to you on both pots of money as well as these flexibilities and waivers. Next slide, please. So I'll stop there for just a moment because that's going to conclude sort of our prepared information on the CARES Act. Again, we do envision, if I go back to just the GEERS Act, our application is in process, and we do think that that will be submitted in the next week or so, I would say. That is being submitted by the cabinet on behalf of us as well as other agencies. And then we have heard the good news today that the elementary and secondary application will be available today, and we'll start working on that application for submission, both with anticipated quick turnaround times, provided that the system that we submit our applications, keeps on moving in an orderly fashion. So then it will turn around and come to us. And then Charlie, of course, has talked about some of those things that we will need from you as local school districts once we receive those funds to start drawing down money. We'll go over some of this as well on Tuesday's call, but that's kind of where we are on the CARES Act. Tony, do we have any other questions on the CARES Act right now?
Yes, we do. Hold on. Let me go up here and see. We've got SBDM councils. I know I saw CARES here. More on ESSER. So yes, let me just go ahead and stop sharing this so I can get back over to that screen. Okay. Oops. I guess my computer moved. Sorry about that. Okay. So we have, does ESSER money have to be distributed? Does it have to be distributed to schools through the Title I ranking report type allocation?
Yes, so the CARES Act does provide the method of allocation to local school districts. The Governor's Emergency Fund doesn't have that same requirement, but the Federal Act does require us to distribute the elementary and secondary pot of money through Title I, just the allocation process.
Questions on what type of recording system should they use for documenting non-reimbursed COVID expenses?
As far as documents, we're going to cover that in our guidance that we're going to send out. As far as what you need to make sure, this is probably from an audit perspective, what do you need to have as backup? And we will be having that guidance in our written guidance when that rolls out.
All right. And are they still, I know that's not a, sorry, that's another question, not related to CARES. Is there any thought to simply divide the $30 million by the 172 school districts to assure equitability?
We've had conversations, some preliminary conversations about different ways that it may be allocated, but we are searching for an equitable manner to do that. We just haven't really landed on what that looks like yet, waiting to see if our position advocating for all districts to receive something is accepted by USAID.
Right. Can CARES funds be utilized to provide compensatory education services?
Compensatory ed, it can be used for that out of the elementary and secondary pot. Yeah, it sure can. And I guess it could be, and I'll let our Office of Special Education and Early Learning weigh in on this a little bit. I don't know if we have anyone on the call, but there are also some opportunities for the remote learning and technology provisions. So it may be that the Governor's Fund could also be used for that, but I'll let them kind of weigh in if they're on the call. If not, we will take that as a question so that as we prepare guidance, we can address that specifically.
Okay, I know that Greta was working, she was working on a different webinar with CCSSO and a national call. Is there anybody else from special ed?
Why don't we just take that as a question and we'll make sure that we address that in our guidance.
Okay, I will mark that one. All right, and then let's see, we have some more on. With anticipated state budget shortfalls, can we anticipate the ESSER funds needing to replace reduced SEEK funds?
The ESSER funds are not intended to be used to replace the state aid, which is SEEK. That is not what they're intended to do. For this school year, of course, we expect your SEEK payments will flow accordingly for the rest of the school year. I know that districts do have concern, and rightfully so, about local revenues coming in. So I do think that is a legitimate concern on your revenues for the rest of this school year. And then on Tuesday's call, we'll be talking about SEEK for next year and talking about the provisions of Senate Bill 177 related to 1819 data and 1920 data. So we'll address more of that on this superintendent's call for Tuesday.
Okay, and I know that you addressed some of the technology issues as it relates to the GEER funds, but this was a specific question about existing leases on Chromebooks for students.
and they wanted to know if the GEER funds can be used to help cover these costs, or does it have to be new leases entered into after March 13th?
I do think that if you have a contract in place already, it was in existence on March 13th, and you have amounts that are due and payable since March 13th, that you could utilize GEER funds to support that as they are being used for remote learning, and that is a permissible expenditure under the GEERS Act. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, go ahead and shoot me an email and with some more details so I can understand more fully what the question you're answering. I could also have David Couch weigh in on that as we receive that question.
Okay. When will the ESSER assurance be available on GMAP? Will there be a separate assurance for the GEER funds?
Charlie, can you answer that question, please?
Yeah, so we have a draft document ready, but until we get guidance and make sure that US Ed does not have any additional requirements, we're not going to upload that, but we have the ability to do that very soon, very quickly.
Okay. And may the GEER funds be used for transportation staff salary during the summer feeding?
Yes, they can be. And in fact, when we worked on the application for the governor's emergency fund, we specifically had that in mind. I mean, we have heard from districts who have spent a great deal of time, effort, and energy, and have engaged their transportation staff and utilized their buses in order to deliver food. And so this was a conscientious effort on behalf of the department and the lieutenant governor and the governor's office to try to help take care of those gaps in funding that the meals time rate just doesn't cover, that you all have expended. So certainly the GEERS app can be used to help support those expenditures that you've incurred that you can't quite cover through USDA.
Okay. Well, I guess we talked about the custodial cleaning with GEER funds to help with NTI handout and turn-in. They're wanting to know if they can use that to offset expenses related to cover that extra cleaning that they're going to need to do when the handout comes in.
So if we remember the GEERS money, that is the governor's emergency money, that's really to be used to support those kind of two broad topics: remote learning, technology, and food service. The elementary and secondary funds can be used for those other purposes that are being described.
Okay. And of the federal relief funds that are being available to the districts, will there be a requirement to offer a portion of these funds to private schools?
Yeah, we talked about that just a little bit. On the slide deck, there is an equitable services requirement, and we'll be issuing written guidance on that. We have provided in this presentation kind of the minimal amount that we know, but yes, that is a provision of both GEER and ESSER. Okay.
And I got that one. Do you want to keep going, or do you want to?
Let's, in the interest of time, let's switch to another part of our presentation that we wanted to share today, and that's related to the pandemic electronic benefits transfer. And while Tony's pulling up the presentation, this is a new opportunity that I would say is on the horizon. We appreciate so much, as we've said repeatedly, the work being done by local school districts, staff, employees, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, other people that have pitched in to really help in this time of crisis when it comes to feeding. As you see on the national news, food banks are just being overridden by requests. They have new segments of the population that are accessing their resources. And so it's really important to the levels that we can that we continue to support continued food service for our students and to benefit their families as well. So we want to tell you a little bit about this. This has not been effectuated by Kentucky as yet. So I would say it is in the works. We are working with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services in order to bring this to your families and students. And so I wanted to invite Lauren Moore, our Director of School and Community Nutrition, to kind of talk to you a little bit about this and let you know kind of a little preview so that when it starts coming to your area, you'll be aware of what it really does for us. So Lauren, I'm going to turn it over to you now to talk about P-EBT.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So I mentioned this a few weeks ago, just very briefly on a webinar, but wanted to provide a little bit more information as it becomes available. So the Pandemic Electronic Benefits, or P-EBT, was authorized in the Families First Coronavirus Act, and this gave the Secretary of Agriculture authority to approve state plans to provide temporary emergency benefits to children. Eligible children, or the eligibility pool for P-EBT, includes any child who would have received free or reduced price meals at school if not for our current situation. And this eligibility pool does include students who attend CEP schools. I know we have a lot of CEP schools in the state, so those children that receive meals at no cost at those schools will be included. P-EBT benefits will be administered by the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and KDE has been working with them to develop our state plan, although, as Robin mentioned, the state plan has not yet been submitted. Next slide, please. So some important notes that we do want to mention, that as we have been planning for this, KDE staff are working to develop resources to distribute to districts in order for you to distribute to your households, to publicize the availability of these benefits when they become available. We will send those out to you all as soon as the state plan is approved. P-EBT benefits will be in addition to the current meal service you're providing, so children may receive P-EBT benefits while also receiving meals through the summer food service program or the seamless summer option program. These benefits they're based upon, the calculation is based upon the USDA meal rates for breakfast and lunch, so they will be $5.70 per day. The number of days for the benefits will be, in our state plan that we submit, will be an average number of days from when school was released in March, or our traditional in-person classes, through the end of May. One item that's not listed here in the slides that I want to mention is KDE has been working with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. It has been determined that the application process that they will use will require households to provide the SSID, the statewide student ID, when a household submits their application. So I do want to mention that districts should begin considering how they will provide those SSIDs to your families. We also plan to have a future webinar to include food service directors, your DPPs in your districts, and also your CASES leads, so that we can provide the full details once we have those available. And we will have individuals from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services on that webinar as well. So that is just kind of a preview as we are in the planning phases for this program, and we will continue to provide any details that we can as they become available.
Okay. Tony, I was going to check back to see if you had other questions. Any questions about P-EBT?
I'll leave that slide up there for a second and see if I can do this while I leave the slide up. Give me a second here. Okay, let's see. P-EBT. Not yet. It looks like we still have some more ESSER and GEER and CARES funding. We have some graduation questions. We have some other stuff in here, and some more funding, just general funding questions. Okay. So I guess we can see if they come in, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll leave this up just in case we have some late join, because this is something that we are going to want to get out to our families. And I did speak with your office earlier today. We will be working on a flyer that you all at the district level will be able to send out. Hopefully that will convey this in a way that's very easy for your families to understand, and hopefully be able to take advantage of this benefit that they should be able to receive. Oh, wait, here we go. Lauren, there was a question for you. It says, for Lauren, does this mean the congregate feeding for the traditional summer feed will be waived?
Well, P-EBT is a different benefit. The non-congregate waiver is currently approved through June 30th. And we anticipate that may be extended, but we have not received an extension for that. So your traditional programs, your summer food service program or seamless summer, whichever your district is providing currently, the non-congregate waiver is currently approved through June 30th of 2020. Okay. And any extension we receive, we'll be sure to get that out to you as soon as we receive that.
Okay, and then another question, does P-EBT flow through the district or does it go directly to families?
P-EBT would go directly to the family.
Okay, and if you attend a CEP school, are all students eligible regardless if they are free, reduced, or full paid lunch?
Yes, they are. So any student in a CEP school that receives meals at no cost would be eligible, and then also those who receive free or reduced price lunches in a non-CEP school.
Okay. I think that those are all for the P-EBT. There is a general question. Will the questions that we submitted prior to the webcast via the Google form be answered today? And the answer to that is yes. I just need to go switch over to that form and get those questions. So while I ask another question and somebody answers that, I will switch over to that. And then will these questions and answers be available as a source of information? And the answer to that question is yes. We will add it to our Q&A document that will be available online. We refer to it as the yellow sheet, I believe. I can't remember which color it is, but it's on our website, and we are working to update that. And that has all of the questions. We try to keep it updated. I know it's probably about a week or two behind. That has all of the questions that we answer, so that you can try to find it there, so that it's easy for you to find. So we will send out that as well. Okay, another P-EBT question. Is this different from the Baylor application that delivers directly to families?
Yes, it is. That's a good question. So the Meals to You program through Baylor is a separate household distribution of food, whereas this program will actually be an electronic benefits card, similar to the SNAP EBT benefits that are currently provided through CHFS.
Okay, I just loaded the Google form. Let me go to the next question. These are going to be we're going to be going back to some CARES funds questions. So let's see, are districts required to allocate ESSER funds to individual schools, or can this be kept at the district level towards needs?
That's a good question. And the guidance that we have received so far indicates that you can keep it at the district level, or you can choose to allocate it to schools. It's your choice. So another way that I think USED is trying to make as flexible as possible to meet whatever needs of the district are. So yes, you can keep it at the district level.
Okay, is there a timeline to when funds have to be spent?
Yes, funds have to be spent, and I'm saying this cautiously as I say it, but it's September 30th of 2022 is the outside date right now.
For both ESSER and for GEER?
Matt, is that correct for both ESSER and GEER?
Yes.
Okay, that takes care of the next question. And then where can we find the updated funding matrix?
The updated funding matrix will send you out that email. Your district finance officers should be very, very familiar with that. It's on our finance federal grants site. So we'll make sure that as part of the questions, we will include that web link.
Due to the late possible payment of taxes and MVR, which our district relies on heavily, can we use this money to bridge funding while we wait on the late payments?
Yes, with the caveats that we discussed before. Really, the intent is not to use use it for state aid, but we also saw that kind of mix of talking about salaries at the same time. So we do understand that some people will have cash flow needs. And in Charlie's slide, he talked about if you are having some cash flow issues, of course, we would recommend that you contact us so that we can help you with that in any way that we can. And then also you can use funds to kind of help with your cash flow situation.
Okay. The next is, where did it go? I'm trying to find more on CARE so we can kind of keep these all together. So how do we, go ahead.
I have one, Tony, from while you're looking for some
Okay.
others. One question is just to confirm whether or not the CARES Act funding is just for LEAs, or are there options under CARES Act for other affiliated educational organizations, co-ops, things like that, that are populated by LEAs, or that are comprised of a group of LEAs? Does that make sense?
Okay.
I'm going to ask Matt to kind of weigh in on this too, but it talks about us dispersing the funds to LEAs as far as the governor's fund is concerned. And for the emergency fund, now, and in saying that, you may have relationships with certain outside entities that would be beneficial to help you achieve your goals, either under the governor's fund or under the elementary and secondary. But as far as dispersing directly funds from the department, we will be dispersing directly to LEAs. So you may be able to use those funds in a way, but the Act requires us to disperse to LEAs.
Okay. Okay, I'm going over to the Google Doc, and I do have some more P-EBT questions and summer food questions. So Lauren, I think this may be for you. If we are not a summer food service program, can we still become one? And is that recommended even if we have a community partner in order to secure funding and as a backup?
If you are not a summer food service program sponsor currently, you can absolutely contact my office and we can work with you. And we can also work through your questions and considerations about working with a local partner, because we do, of course, have nonprofit sponsors who may already be in your area and providing food service, so we can assist you with making those determinations.
Okay. And how will P-EBT work if you don't have a summer food program? Should we apply for summer feeding to ensure we receive those funds? This particular district does not have a CEP program.
No. So was the question about a summer food program in P-EBT or CEP? Could you repeat that, please?
They said, how will P-EBT work if you don't have a summer food program?
Okay. So the Summer Food Service Program and P-EBT are two separate programs. The Summer Food Service Program can continue to be provided by your district if you have that program, or again, if you don't and you'd like to talk to our office, we can assist with that. P-EBT will be benefits that go directly to households, and it will be through an application the household will submit on the CHFS Benefind website. So two different programs.
Okay. And then will the P-EBT cards be automatically mailed out to the families of the CEP districts, or do they have to apply? And I think you just answered that with they have to apply.
Yes, we'll have to. So we're still working on the details, but we currently in our planning phases plan to have two different groups. One will be a group that already has a benefit card issued by CHFS or receives some type of benefit from CHFS. And that group will most likely not have to apply. That will be an automatic. distribution to those households. And then there will be an application process for Group 2, which would be those households who do not currently receive benefits.
And how long will P-EBT benefits be in effect for children who are eligible?
P-EBT will be from an average there. I can actually tell you the amount of days. So March will be, they will receive that $5.70 benefit per day for 12 days in March, 22 days in April, and 21 days in May.
Okay, and the next question is, I know we are to continue food service till the end of June. Do you continue in July under the same guidelines as well?
So summer food service programs, of course, are made to be for the entire summer. The challenge that we have currently is the non-congregate waiver that we have currently, that's a nationwide waiver, is through June 30th of 2020. Kentucky does plan to submit a statewide waiver for non-congregate if we have not received a nationwide extension beyond June 30th, but again, that's still preliminary. I understand it would be very challenging to switch to a congregate setting, and it's most likely not going to be, would not even fit in our plans, of course, for that the governor has mentioned in his press conferences. So we do plan, if we have not received a nationwide waiver for non-congregate, to extend beyond June 30th to apply for a state waiver for the remainder of the summer program to be non-congregate.
Okay. All right, and while I'm in the Google form, I'm going to go ahead and ask a couple of the other questions that are in here that are not related to the PowerPoint, just so that I don't forget them. Kevin, there's a question about the Mississippi graduations that I know that we've addressed a couple of times, and they would like to know if there's any more guidance that we've received from Governor Beshear's office as to whether or not this type of graduation would be allowable.
We're working on that, and we're going to have a guidance document to you about graduation. Right now, as you know, you heard the governor at the press conference talk about the two main ways, which would be a virtual graduation will be completely online. And then the second way would be having a drive up, drive in, drive through. They're called various things that churches are doing, and they're satisfying the protocols put in place by public health. And so those are obvious two ways you can do that. We know you also are coming up with some other ideas, and one of them is the Mississippi model. I'll call it. A school there is doing where students would have to arrive at a certain time, only one student and their limited family at a certain time, let's say 3:15 p.m. And then they go through, get their picture made, get the diploma at a distance away from school administration, limited attendance of school administration, of course. Then that's videoed, and then they walk through the door, and then the next student comes in at 3:20 or 3:25, and they're all spaced out. Obviously, that's could be a logistical nightmare, but if it were approved and under our scenario and under our public health, could be also rewarding. I understand that. We just don't have the answers on that yet. The concern would be, I think, the number of people going in and out of doors and touching things in a relatively short period of time would be my guess from public health. So we're going to get you answers on that. I don't know. I know you need that sooner rather than later because you're making plans. So that's all we have on that now. We are going to have someone assigned here at the department to take all of our graduation and prom and event type questions and answer those to ensure that we're giving you out consistent advice and guidance. I'm sorry I don't have more of a definite answer on that one proposal.
No, that's and I know it's the Gulfport, Mississippi is the school that we've been hearing a lot of, and I know that that's the one that is referenced in this particular question. The next question from the Google Sheets is based on NTI. We've seen several districts post that they are ceasing NTI lessons on a particular date and using the remaining hours as makeup days or remediation dates. Example, we will reach our 1062 hours on May 12th. Can we cease NTI instruction on May 8th and use May 11th and 12th as makeup days or remediation days?
David Cook, are you on the call?
Or Kelly?
And that would probably require a follow-up with that district, because you know, what is intended is, regardless of what you call it, there needs to be student instruction going on those days. So they may be describing, it sounds like they may be describing reviewing material as opposed to introducing new material. I don't know. We may need to ask a follow-up to the district as to some specific, more specific information.
That's fine. I have this particular district's email, so I can have David follow up with him.
And folks that may also have the same question, these are all populated into the Q&A. And then we also are going to stay here until 4 o'clock if necessary to answer all the questions. That's the time we have allotted. So if you're trying to plan, I know some of you may have to jump off. If you do, these are all on the Q&A document and on the COVID-19, KDE COVID-19 page. They will be eventually.
What recommendations do you have about extra duty and or coaching stipends for the 2021 school year? Some have recommended that blanket non-renewals go out for all extra positions.
I also had that question just text to me a minute ago. I was going to ask that as well on behalf of that superintendent. And I think KSBA has given some guidance on some similar questions. I know one of the issues that you're confronting would be the whether or not athletics will be pared down in the fall and then over the summer, and then that in turn affects your ability or need to have extra duty assignments, but we don't have a lot of those answers yet about what athletics will look like in the fall. So that's not an answer, but Todd or you or Robin, you all want to, that is something that we need a guidance document on if we haven't already, and make sure it dovetails in with what KSBA has already provided.
Sure, this is Todd. I'll make a note of that and communicate with KSBA to determine what they have released to date on that topic. I understand what school districts are up against in that nature, and we'll take a look at that and get some guidance out.
And then that also would flow, just so everyone knows, when we're answering that question and that guidance, that could reveal the need for a waiver or something related to that statutorily. And we would, obviously consider, I'm not saying yes or no that we would do a waiver, but to the extent it brings that issue up, we would consider that at that time as to whether that needed to be waived. Something like a statutory requirement might need to be waived, or a timeline or something.
Okay, going back to the soapbox, is it possible for an extension to be granted to the regulatory deadline for funding adjustments being provided to SBDM councils from their original March 1 funding allocations? The current deadline is May 1st.
Yes, I mean that is possible. We would need to talk about any unintended consequences for that. So if Robin, you and Todd could flag that, and there'd be a topic of discussion for leadership.
Yeah, I think we'd also want to include folks from Dr. Foster's office.
Yes.
Okay, fiscal year 2019, is this the 2018-19 or the 2019-20 school year?
Well, it's the 20. Well, I think they're asking which fiscal year.
Yeah, which fiscal year is this? FY 2019. Is this the 2018-19 or is it the 19-20 school year?
I'm sorry, I'm just still not following the question.
It says FY 2019, fiscal year 2019 hyphen. Is this the 28? I think they're wanting to know, is this 18-19 or 19-20 when you refer to fiscal year 2019?
That's the current school year.
Okay. Are we still required to determine which students met the essential skills requirements and give them a special certificate? Is that career tech?
No, that would, that's under, I believe that would be Greta's shop.
Okay. Greta, I'll mark that one for Greta when she comes back so that we can provide an answer for you in the Q&A document. The next question is, let's see, clarification, please. Can the allocated funds received stay at the district level, or do they need to be allocated to each school based on Title I?
So the funds do not have to be allocated to the schools. It can stay at the district level. The Title I allocation of the CARES Act funds is only the way that we determine how much comes to the district in the first place from the state. So once you receive it, you don't have to then follow any of the Title I rules, except you could use it on Title I activities if you wanted to. So, Tony, if I could take just a minute, I've been thinking about a question that I responded to, and I want to issue a little clarification myself if I can.
Okay.
I think the question was somewhat around whether funds could be distributed to other educational type entities rather than just to LEAs. And I wanted to make sure that I clarified that response, because the governor's emergency education relief does allow for the governor to consider awarding funds to LEAs, to institutes of higher education, and also to any other higher education, LEA, or other education-related entity that the governor deems essential for carrying out educational services. So the governor can consider other educational entities to receive some of that funding. And as of course, as we've been working very hard on it, we've been working in conjunction with the lieutenant governor and the cabinet on these two kind of overarching uses for LEAs, which are the technology, remote learning, and the food service. So in order to effectuate those needs, we would disperse those funds to the local school districts. But there could be other agencies or other entities that could receive some of that funding from the governor's pot of money. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't leave people with the impression that other education-related entities couldn't receive funding. It's just that we will distribute to LEAs. I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that.
Okay. This is another question that's related to seniors in the class of 2020. They've seen a great deal of positive coverage around parades over the past couple of weeks. Is it possible to do a parade of some sort for their seniors and still be within the governor's guidelines? Or do you want me to mark this for the guiding document that we're preparing?
Yeah, mark that for the guiding document. When we're talking with public health, we want to make sure that they can weigh in on all of these things. And I just want to remind all the superintendents, when you're planning these events, even if it's an event like a drive-in service, drive-in graduation or drive-in award ceremony or something, even though you know what the governor said on the call about all the things you have to do, the family has to stay in the car, it has to be one family per car, no passing things between cars, and the cars have to be 6 feet apart. Even though you know what those rules are, you still need to involve your local health department officials in planning that, because there may be very specific things about your location or about your community that your health department has that information and needs to help guide you. And so it's very important that you do that. And then, of course, if we do end up giving guidance, we're going to give you guidance, but if the guidance says you can do some of these alternative celebrations, that is also very important that you involve local health department on any of those things outside of the strictly virtual meeting. So my guess is, since, you know, we've been seeing teacher parades and that kind of thing, a general parade tends to be something that's probably permitted, but we all know things can get out of hand, and all it takes is one person running out of a car because they're excited to see so-and-so teacher or so-and-so coach, and without thinking about it, and you could have, exposure there. So we're just going to have to be careful. You all know your communities, and your student bodies and your parents, and what might be appropriate in one community and successful may not be in another. But we'll get you additional guidance on that. We know you all want to be as creative as possible and try to honor the accomplishments of the seniors, but also, most importantly, honor their futures and make sure they understand they have a bright future ahead of them. So,
Okay. Back to a funding question. When referring to 83% of fiscal year 19 Title I funds, is this referring to the funds from 2018-19 or from 2019-20?
Charlie Harmon, are you still on the line? You want to take that one?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it would be federal fiscal year 19, which is the current state fiscal year. So if you'll look on our funding sheet on our grants website, it will be for the one that says state fiscal year 19.
Okay.
And once again, those are estimates. The 83% is sort of a minimum. Could end up being a little bit more than that. So.
All right, Charlie, I think these next two are going to be for you too. I might be wrong. I've only been 2 months in this interim role, but I think I'm getting kind of good at this. All right. Can fiscal year 20 residual ESS funds be extended to be used through next year instead of being rolled to instructional resources?
So that's a great question that we have indirectly answered that. We didn't mention ESS, the Extended School Services funding stream, but all of our state grants we are allowing to continue to remain at the district level. We will pay them out if we already haven't this year, and districts still can spend those over the summer and throughout the beginning of the next school year. You'll still be required to do your CDIP reports on that, and they still have to be spent in the appropriate manner. But the time frame has been extended because school's been out, of course, and we're not exactly sure if they'll be eligible for summer programs or at the beginning of next school year. And it could be better for one district to do summer and not another. Still not sure about those things yet.
Okay, and since the KAR specifies that councils will receive 3.5% of SEEK base, which is 4,000, are districts allowed to allocate less than 140 per student to councils in section 6?
Yeah, I think there's language in the last budget bill and the one that was just passed that sets a minimum at the district level for $100 per student. The district has the choice to go up to that percentage if they choose to.
Okay. And then there's a questions on Perkins. Can Perkins funds be extended past June 30th, at least until September 30th?
Yeah, I believe the waiver that has been approved has given us a full year, federal year, to expend those funds. So if they were ending this September, they would end in September of 21.
Okay. And then are there guidelines for getting students textbooks and materials back at the end of the year? And I can go ahead and answer that one for Kevin, because I know that this is something that we are looking for to address with Dr. Ellis, and I are going to be talking about this as part of the guiding documents. If Dr. Ellis is on. I think she's on.
I am. I actually
Yes.
did not hear the question. I apologize.
Oh, no, it's just about the textbooks and materials and how to get those back at the end of the year. If we can add that one to our list for tomorrow.
We absolutely will. And what is, as Kevin said, and others, we are going to work together to make sure that our guidance is very much aligned to public health guidance that the communities have to ensure consistency. I know there's a lot of questions, so we're kind of going to be looking at, and these are the same buckets that keep surfacing is how do we close out the year logistically? How do we go into summer to provide summer support appropriately? And then talking about the importance of reentry. And we don't take that lightly. We know there's logistics around that. Excuse me. We know that there is mental, social, emotional support that's needed around that. And we know that there's academic support. So we've kind of put those in buckets. And so, as Tony said, we're meeting tomorrow to get organized around that and pull consistent information for you all to have considerations. And we are working really hard to get that to you in a timely manner, but we want to ensure consistency and accuracy as well as you make these really important decisions and prepare for how you will end the year in a very unique way. So Thanks, Tony. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
I would just add that KHSAA has announced that because they're getting questions as well about return of uniforms and athletic equipment from athletes to the property of the school. So they will be following then and adopting the guidance that we issue for the return of academic materials.
Okay, and I'm just going to summarize a couple other questions. There are a lot of you all are asking for additional guidance on graduations, and I do want to assure you that we are going to be addressing this. Questions on virtual graduations. How would that look like? Can we have them come in one at a time? Lots of questions in regards to the Mississippi model, the Gulfport model. So again, we've addressed a couple of those things. These are things we're going to look into as part of this guidance document. And hopefully we can get some answers to you on that. Here's a question that has not been answered in regards to seniors. We are getting a lot of questions from parents about holding students back, especially at the high school level. Parents also want kids to get an extra year of sports eligibility. Can we please have guidance?
Well, Amanda, I'll defer to you, but any retention decision should be made as it would be made any other year based on data and the professional judgment of the school leadership and the teachers with consultation with the parent. It should not be obviously made for athletic reasons. Amanda, you want to elaborate on that?
Sorry, I completely agree. That is very typically discussed early on in the year, and there's a process in place for that as decisions are made along with parents for the academic or social needs of students that's very data driven or have specific issues. I think it's very chancy to discuss sports that I'm not as familiar with, so I don't want to speak to that. But I agree with you, Kevin, on exactly what you're saying. It has to be an informed decision and think about the unintended consequences and long-term effects of the purpose for retention.
Okay, and then Robin, for your shop, there's several questions just on when these guidance documents will be made available. They're not seeing it in the system and they just want to know when that will be available.
So as far as guidance documents, it's really important that we wait until our applications are approved before we can, and to make sure that we don't receive any additional information that we're not aware of yet. But very shortly thereafter, because we already have guidance documents well on their way, very shortly thereafter, you will start seeing those guidance documents. That does not prevent, of course, once funds are received here, and if you have any expenditures that are already related to the issues that we've talked about, then you can go ahead and make that request for expenditures you've already incurred. I would encourage you, we are learning about this together, to kind of try to be as thoughtful as possible about how you are going to utilize the funds, and think about the long term as well as your short term needs, because you will continue to have expenses as we roll along. And again, I keep cautioning about these funds will expire at some point. So you want to be as thoughtful as you can be about the appropriate uses across all your fund sources, how you can satisfy both short-term needs, but also plan for long-term needs as well.
Okay, and they said that they are on GMAP, and I know that we said this earlier, they're not seeing the superintendent assurance doc for ESSER. And I believe you said that those will be uploaded shortly, correct?
Again, as we said, we need to wait until we make sure that we have the applications approved for both of our fund sources and make sure that we don't have any additional requirements that are going to be imposed before we send out the assurance. So we can't really allow districts to go ahead and sign the insurance and send it in until we make sure that we have everything approved and nailed down from the application side on both funds of money.
Okay.
So we do think it will be very quick thereafter.
Okay. I don't know if I don't, forgive me here. You know, my background is as a journalist. The ARRA funds in 2009 were federal, but were treated more like state funds in regards to matching TRS. For example, if we pay teachers to tutor to recover from COVID, would the TRS match be at the 3% rate versus the 16.105% rate? I don't know if that's ERA or if you just say ARRA funds.
ERA funds, and
Yes.
Charlie Norman, if you can answer that one, I will give you a gold star today. If not, we'll probably need to take that one in writing and get back to them.
Okay, I don't have a name on that one. So if whoever asked that question wants to send Robin, Charlie, or myself an email, we can make sure that is answered. We will also, as always, put all of these questions into the Q&A document that's uploaded and shared with you on our COVID-19 page.
Tony, I have a comment from a superintendent here on a text about when could they expect the guidance regarding graduation and prom, the limitations around any type of creative way to celebrate those, and emphasizing by the superintendent that obviously this is a hot topic of discussion in their communities. We completely understand that, and that is to be expected, and there's nothing wrong that that's the hot topic right now that you're dealing with, because these are life changing events or memorable events, and we know the importance of them. So I'm going to set a deadline for us to have a guidance document to you by close of business on Monday. We need that to be populated by public health, and they may just want to give us some guidelines instead of commenting maybe on the specific types of thing that is being proposed in Mississippi. But so we've already had the information over to them. We'll be following up with them, and then we'll be populating the guidance to you hopefully by close of business Monday.
Okay. Yes, and then we'll have several of these questions on there. We'll make sure that we use when crafting that guidance document. Another question about emailing out this PowerPoint, I will do so. If you are not getting the emails, you may not be on the if you're a superintendent and not getting the emails with these PowerPoints, please let us know, because maybe for some reason you're not in our master superintendent list, and that obviously is a problem. So let us know. Once in a while, there's a glitch in the system, so we just want to make sure that you are getting the communication from us. We just make sure we keep that up to date. In regards to non-public schools, is this determined by schools who receive services from the LEA or determined by non-public schools within the school district boundary? And how do you determine which schools to service?
So the question on equitable services for non-public schools, we did include the one slide for today's presentation about what we know right now, but we are, even on today's, I think, webcast with CCSSO and USED, I think we saw lots of questions about that particular topic. And so we are going to have to await additional guidance from that in order to clearly answer your question.
Okay. It was my understanding SEEK base will not change and transportation will be taken from the 1819 information. I thought I heard there is some questions if that is still true. Please advise.
We're going to talk more about that on Tuesday's call, talking about the provisions of Senate Bill 177 and how that fits into your planning for next school year. And so we will discuss the provisions of Senate Bill 177. It talks about a district may choose to use 1819 or 1920. So we'll have a lot more information on that. I also want to share with you that we're going to have information because we've gotten a lot of questions on the logistics of attendance, funds, closeout, school report card, a lot of those end of the year type activities that are going on from our operational staff. And so that's why we felt we had enough questions. And as you all continue to populate more today, we'll have a lot more information on all those topics on our Tuesday call.
Okay, another question. I'm just making sure I voice these so you know that they're being addressed. What to do with leftover senior trip monies or prom funds? So again, I think that that's, obviously ultimately a local thing, but we will try to discuss and talk about that in our meeting tomorrow and try to get that into your guiding document, unless Kevin wants to add something to that.
No, and that's a good question as well, because that could have some Red Book implications. So we'll need to put our Red Book experts on that in case there is guidance that flows from Red Book that might be applicable to some of those funds.
Kevin, that topic about student activity funds is on our radar to have on Tuesday's call.
About the senior, particularly the senior money?
Yes.
Okay. All right. There does seem to be confusion as to what fiscal year it is right now. So if we can just clarify and let them know right now what fiscal year it is.
So we're in fiscal year 20 right now. It ends June 30th of 2020.
Whoever asked that question, I don't feel bad. I can never figure out what fiscal year it is. It's always confused me. So thank you, Charlie, for clarifying.
Oh, it's same here. Same
The
here.
other confusion is whether you're talking about a federal fiscal year or a state fiscal year.
And then the follow-up question is to just clarify, is the ESSER fiscal year 19, would that be 83% of Title I 310F or 310E? This may clarify better. Thanks. F as in Frank or E as in Edward?
Yeah, it's F as in Frank.
Okay.
And I bet that's not a superintendent asking.
Probably a finance officer. Let's see. Okay. They said that they received the webinar invitation, but the PowerPoint was not included. Others may have had the same issue. So we will go ahead. It was not included as an attachment. It's actually inside your invitation, but we will go ahead and make sure that you get a copy of this PowerPoint. It'll also be in the, it'll be linked to the news release that the communications department sends out too, since this will make sure that I promise you that you will get a copy of the PowerPoint. The question related to the allocation of funds based on Title I fiscal year 19, the question was related to the allocation of funds based on the Title I fiscal year 19, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I don't even know what day it is, so it's hard for me to keep the years straight too. So let me just clear that one out. To follow up on the Perkins funds extensions, are we still doing a Perkins 5 application for next year? And if so, when is that due?
I'm guessing we'll have to defer to Mr. Horstman on that.
All right. Is David or Leslie on? Okay, if not, we will go ahead and mark that one and make sure that that's answered and provided later on. All right, let's see here. I think that we've got essential skills. That was also, and that was CTE, and that's also going to be David or Leslie. So I can make sure that one was marked. Is there any specific project codes finance officers should use for these funds? I can't remember if I asked that question.
We did have one slide in the presentation that talked about that for chart of accounts purposes, but we will have additional information on Tuesday as well, or in a subsequent call just with district finance officers to get into the more nuts and bolts of tracking and coding and documenting everything.
Okay. All right, and I think that that wraps up the questions. The rest of these are duplicates, or they deal with the graduations. And once again, Kevin has said that we would get these a guiding document by the close of day or close of business on Monday. So we will be working hard to, we're meeting tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow morning, to get that into a format and out to you all on by the end of the day Monday. But if you are not receiving emails from us, from either myself or from Kevin, when we send an email out to all superintendents, please let us know, because that means that there's something wrong with the system, or there's a glitch with your email address, and we want to make sure that that's cleared up.
And I don't know if it's going to be several guidance documents or we're just going to do one large guidance document. Tony, may be the best idea to cover the end of year activities, including return of materials, as well as the prom and the graduation type thing. We can talk about how we roll that out, but we know we owe you several guidance documents on several issues. And we are shooting to have those on close of business Monday, at least on the return of materials, prom, graduation, those type things. And I know you all may have a little bit of frustration on not having all answers right now. And on the federal side, just know the federal government, compared to how things normally go, they're moving at lightning speed, even though we don't have the Q&A document from them yet, et cetera. They are really moving fast, and they are making it relatively easy for states. So, and I know, so you feel like you're just getting a little bit of information at each webcast, but we're getting it to you just as quick as we receive it. And we want to make sure that you get these funds as quickly as possible so we can spend every penny of them to support your districts and of course, supporting students.
Okay, I think David Horseman is on now. I think he was on mute. Is David on?
Yes, and I was I had both mutes on. I got my headset and had them both on. I've got a text into Carla on the application date for Perkins.
Okay.
And I know we've pushed those out, but obviously, if this is a person that has a particular problem with getting that in, they can contact us, because I thought it was either May 1 or June 1. And I don't want to say that for sure until I hear back from her. So if you can get a name, or I can put it in the questions, we can add that to the question as soon as I hear back from her. She had Perkins meetings this afternoon and yesterday, I think, online. So we've got 2 or 3 things going at once.
Okay. And then there was also a question, it was about the essential skills for CTE. Did you see that question? Or had you heard that one?
I heard the essential skills, but I didn't really get the gist of the question.
Okay, I'm trying to find it because I had marked it.
Tony, this is Todd. I believe that is a question related to graduation. There's a statute that requires, beginning with this school year, that when school districts identify that students have completed essential workplace skills as identified at the district level, that they will place some type of seal or certificate on the student's graduation diploma.
Yes.
I think that's what that's related to.
And there's a parallel question that goes with that. Do they have to make a report next year? And that was required to be reported every other year beginning in 1920. So there won't be a requirement to report those programs, but for next fall.
Okay.
But as far as the certificate or seal goes, it's my understanding that that is determined at the local level, and the local school district would go ahead and make that determination and place those seals or certificates on the diplomas as
That's
they
correct.
deem appropriate.
I agree.
Okay. All right. So I think that wraps it up. And I just, before I throw it back to Kevin, I wanted to also reiterate again what I had mentioned at the beginning of the news or this cast is that the Department of Education, the Communications Department sent you all superintendents, that is, an email here earlier today, right after lunch. We are looking for class of 2020 group photos for a special project that we are working on to honor our seniors. This is in conjunction with Lieutenant Governor's office and the Workforce Development Cabinet. It's hopefully, if we can pull it off, it'll be a very special event that we hope that it'll come together. So, but in the meantime, I do need you to submit those photos, and the deadline for that is May 1st. The other thing that you're going to get from me here in just a little bit is going to be a news release and a note in your email that we are seeking applications for the 2021 Commissioner Student Advisory Council. We have 14 open seats due to a large number of seniors who are graduating. And this is an excellent opportunity for sophomores, incoming or who will be sophomores, juniors, and seniors to join us here at the Department of Education as part of this advisory council. Now more than ever, it's critically important that we have student voice present. I think that Commissioner Brown can speak a little bit about that, as any of my fellow coworkers on this call, of how important their voice has been to us in the last several months, or just the last several, feels like several months, but last 2 months. And we're going to be looking for those applications to be turned in by May 15th. So I will be sending that out in a press release here in the next 20 minutes. And you will also get that in your email box as well. So 2 things just to keep in your mind, in your back of your mind, coming from our department. And Kevin, it's back to you.
Well, thank all the KDE staff for the time today and the effort on the questions and the effort yet to come on answering the questions that on the Q&A document that we didn't have answers for immediately. And obviously thank all of you for participating. I know it's a large amount of time out of your day. We hope this is valuable to you, and we continue to work to streamline the website and to start bringing out from that Q&A document, which is very large, trying to tease out those questions and answers by subject matter to make those more easy to find and accessible to you. We're going to continue doing that. Have a great rest of the evening, and we will see you online. Thank you for all you're doing.